You're listening to How to 20-something, the best podcast that helps both men and women navigate their 20s and learn how to adult across all aspects of their lives. We're going to focus on career, relationships, finances, fitness, nutrition, and all of the common challenges and obstacles a typical 20-something will face in this post-college life. I'm your host, Jess Diamond, and I am the CEO and founder of Jess Diamond Coaching, where I help young professionals get their shit together, gain their confidence, and own their life. No one prepares you for this adulting world, so allow me to help you feel like you are no longer a chicken running around with its head cut off, and that you actually know what the hell is going on and what your next step to take is. Welcome to How to 20-something. Welcome back to another episode of How to 20-something, where today I've brought on a relationship coach and therapist to help you step into this next part of your relationship with your partner, that is moving in together. And I want to preface this episode with saying, no, Mom, no, Jenna, I am not at that point in my relationship yet, but I do believe this is an important topic of conversation to have because a lot of people in their 20s move in with the person they are dating for the first time in their life. And there are a lot of conversations that need to be had, perspectives that need to be shifted, and understandings that need to be developed before the move-in process begins, and even some trials and tribulations that come up when you're already living together. I've personally have never lived with a partner. I've never even lived with a man before. I've had girl roommates. I grew up in an all-girl household, and I've been living alone for the last 3.5 years. So I know when the time comes to move in with my partner, it's going to be a massive change for me. And you might be in a similar boat, which is why I want to have this conversation with Mylira and hopefully help you avoid common pitfalls I see happen to many people in their 20s who go to move in with the person they are in a relationship with. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce her to the show. Mylira Green is a licensed psychotherapist, certified complex trauma professional, and transformative relationship coach with over a decade of experience helping individuals and couples navigate love, healing, and intentional decision-making. With expertise in couples counseling, sex therapy principles, and relationship interventions, she supports partners in building healthy foundations rooted in clarity, communication, and emotional safety. Mylira also served as the resident relationship coach on the Michael Collier's morning show, offering practical advice to audiences nationwide. She is passionate about helping couples explore the emotional and mental impacts of living together before marriage through a trauma-informed, holistic lens. Hi, Mylira, and welcome to How to 20-something.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to dive right into this topic of conversation and just ask you right off the cuff, what are some crucial conversations to have or questions to ask prior to beginning the move-in process?
So one of the greatest things that I tell people is, one, you have to have a conversation with yourself about your own value system. There are many of us that are raised in different religion backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, that honestly say that moving in together is a no-no. However, I am a big advocate, especially being a Christian therapist and someone who does follow a faith that typically looks at moving in together as a no, unless you're married. I always try to tell people you have to know what is your situation and being able to walk in your own convictions. So you have to sit down with you and see your why. Why are we even discussing moving in together? Is it for convenience, or is it because we're taking the next step to the next step in our relationship? There are two different conversations. I know now for most households, you need, I'll say, 4 sources of income typically in order to maintain. So if it's more for convenience, then now we need to kind of have that conversation. Is this the best move, or can I shift some things in my lifestyle to make this a little bit better? Second question is, if I'm taking the next step in my relationship, then does this look like a roommate situation where you have your own space, I have my own space, or is this, let's kind of trial run it forever, really going to work, where we actually are staying in the same space, sharing the same bed, doing the same movements, all of those things. So it really has to be a self-reflection, because nothing's going to work if you're working and walking in a conviction that doesn't make you feel joy every day. So that's the first real step. But then the second step is having a conversation with your partner and both of you guys really listening to the whys and seeing if you can come together and create, I won't even say a compromise, but create a plan of action that works best for you two. Not anyone else, but you two.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So you just brought up so many things that I definitely want to talk about. Let's start with the convenience, because I think when I talk to a lot of people, I think like older 20 somethings have a little bit more of that self awareness of, I don't want to move in out of convenience. Like, yes, cheaper rent is nice. Yes, we're spending so much time at each other's place already, and so it just makes sense. And that's kind of where they go. Like, it just makes sense to do this, rather than feeling into, is this the next step in our relationship? My younger 20 somethings think of it more in the convenience aspect of right timing, of, well, yeah, but like both our leases are up, or we found an apartment and that works for our budget. And so again, it goes back to that, it makes sense. How can couples differentiate the two of like moving in together out of convenience versus it actually being that right next step? And then how do they determine the difference? Because I do think not a large part, but at the same time, a large part of it being the right next step is that convenience factor.
Yeah. And I will say this. So this is the question that I tell my clients to ask themselves. And this is going to be kind of a serious question. But if you were to die today and your funeral is tomorrow, how would you want your person to be listed? As your spouse, your special friend, or not listed at all? When you ask yourself that question, that will let you know, even if convenience is the next step, but that will let you know if this convenience is for temporary purposes, or is this convenience for something permanent for me to actually shift into. So when we're looking at convenience versus next step, anytime you're talking about moving in with each other, there's a financial conversation that's there. And as we just said, we need multiple incomes to really maintain a very kind of like simple way of living. I won't even say exceeded way of living, but just regularly paying bills, having gas in your car, being able to entertain. So convenience is a huge part of that decision making. But what will determine the type of move this is, whether this is a roommate move where we're really just doing it for convenience, or as this is next step move, is again, how do I define who you are? And we have to be okay with being honest with that situation, because all of our journey is not going to look like you go to school, you found the love of your life, you get married, you have a child, and now life is great. For some people, they do the stages in a different way. But you have to, again, know what's going to be something that makes you have peace when you lay down at night. So if the convenience aspect is there, that's normal, that's natural. We have basic needs that we need to have met: food, water, shelter. Sex is under there, but I'm not here as the sex therapist today. But then there's an other space where it is this truly my person? Can I see myself doing forever? Am I spending time with this person, or am I building a life with this person? If I'm spending time with you, that comes with sacrifices. And sometimes I look and I regret the decisions that I make. I may look and be like, why did I even do that? Or am I building my life with a person where you're bringing your strengths and I'm bringing my strengths? And from us actually doing that, we're building something that is long standing and lasting. Even if that doesn't lead to an actual marriage, but whatever we learn in this space, this is a teaching space, and we're both okay with whatever lesson that we're learning. That's how you make that decision. Am I okay at the end of this, whether this works or not, with saying that I spent a certain amount of time with this person? And then the last piece of this is, if you have more questions than answers already, the answer is not to move in with each other. If I'm already wondering if this person is right for me, if I'm already wondering why we always arguing, we never get along, my family don't like their family, our friends don't get along. If I have more questions than I do answers, the right answer is not moving in with each other at all. So those are like the 3 different elements that I typically tell people when considering moving in with each other.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people get caught up on timelines of, well, we've been together for X amount of time, so we should be moving in together next. And it's like, it really comes down to the individual relationship. Like, is that what's next for you? And I like the points that you're bringing up of, do I see this, like, will I be okay with whatever the result is? Of like, we move it together and we end up getting married and we spend the rest of our lives together. We move in together and we realize this isn't working and go our separate ways. And it's knowing just your relationship. And it's really something you can only answer for yourself with your partner. We're just here to help you with some other thought processes to come into play so that if it is the next step for you, if it is truly that next important step in your relationship that you are making together, there's a lot of other things to think about. So you brought up finances, and I want you to dive a little bit into that. What is your suggestion? I've had this conversation with my boyfriend about finances for when that time comes of moving in together, but I want to hear from you, and then I'll give my perspective. But what's a good rule of thumb for dividing up finances, knowing that everyone's financial situation is going to be different?
Yeah, it's so important to be okay with what you bring to the table. And I say that because even in my personal relationship with my fiance, I make a little bit more because I do have an actual standard career. I'm a psychotherapist, I'm a coach. I go to a 9 to 5 that has a set, whatever with the government. So I bring in a little bit more. When we first met, he was rebuilding, and now he has a government job. And what we end up doing is having conversations and check-ins probably about every 2 to 3 months, where we're really looking at the question of, hey, what do we need to shift? So when we budget based off of what we're actually bringing in. It's not a 50-50 rule. It's not well, you're the man, you do 100%. I do absolutely nothing. It is literally what is mine is yours. However, I'm navigating what's mine in a way that's intentional so it doesn't impact what we have going on together. So we have a budget where, hey, I know I'm bringing a little bit more. So this is what I'm setting aside for the bills. These are the bills that I know that I can take care of. I remember when we first decided to actually move in with each other, we had this whole budget. It did not work because he ended up with nothing. I ended up with too much. Like, it was just a lot. So going back and readjusting financially is super duper important, and being realistic. Don't hold on to cultural standards, because that's really why marriages are failing today. We have so many roles that we want to play, so many cultural standards, so really religious, what I'll say, rituals that we follow. But if we go to the reality of, this is your job, this is my job, this is how much I bring in every 2 weeks, this is how much you bring in every 2 weeks. What bills make sense for who pocket of money? If we go out to eat, we're both sharing the bill. And I know there are certain people that are very traditional, so my way of thinking may be a little bit different, but I've realized that's a lot more helpful if we do it where it all kind of comes together and I can tell you what I can and cannot do, compared to all the other stuff. And then now somebody is feeling like I don't ever have anything. So really having that conversation of, what is your relationship with your finances? Are you a spender or are you a saver? That is a real conversation to have. If you're a spender and we're bringing our money together, you now have to know, as long as you take care of what you agreed to take care of, I'm not going to ask no questions on what you're spending. Or vice versa. If you're the saver, okay, I'm a saver, but I can't be upset if they're out here spending, So those are the levels of conversation to have. And then also asking yourself, what other resources do we have out there? For some people, again, their religious belief may say you're not supposed to move in with each other. So you may want to exhaust other resources. Should I get a roommate? Do I move in with family? If those aren't options, which sometimes they're not, then we have to come to the reality of, okay, well, this is the situation we're facing. How can we come together and bring our finances together where we're both set up for success at the end, and then continue to go back and tap back into that budget or whatever you guys have decided to do?
Yeah, I agree. My boyfriend and I have talked about how we would split finances, and it would be equitably instead of equally, because he does make more than me, and I'm self-employed. So what I bring in on a month-to-month basis varies drastically. It could vary drastically from one month to another. And I explained to him that it would be the average of what I project I'll make. And even if I don't make that amount, I'll still be responsible for my share of the bills. And it was also like, what bills do we split? Like, what bills are important? And for me, the bills that are important to split is rent and groceries. I think those are like the two biggest ones that I think should be split. And then when it comes to like utilities and Wi-Fi, I don't care as much. They're not as heavy. I think that could be more 50-50 instead of taking our yearly finances, dividing into the months and going that way. But again, that's what we feel would work for us. And it's also knowing that as I become more successful in my business, that those numbers will change. And it is important to have those check-ins that just because you set finances up front does not mean it's not going to change down the line. You can't project any job loss that might happen or a job change, a promotion, a demotion. You don't know. You have no idea. So it is important to have those regular check-ins. Do you have a recommendation of how often? Is it yearly? Is it quarterly? Biannually?
I would say anytime there's a change is important to have a conversation. So if that change happens every day, then we need to talk every day. If that change happens quarterly, we need to talk quarterly. But anytime there is a change in your relationship, whether it's financially, mindset wise, sometimes you may read something or hear something on a podcast and be like, oh, I'm going to implement that. You need to talk to your partner because your partner is used to today the you before you had that knowledge. So I'm really big on, if there is a change, have a conversation. I know with me and with my significant other, we utilize the Apple Notes where you can collaborate with one another. So like the notepad, a lot of our stuff is up there. So if something changed and I know I need to talk to you about it, I may change it on there first and then shoot a quick text message. Hey, we need to talk about something later because financially I make more, I make less, something shifted, something's coming up. I paid this debt off that we were talking about. So what's the next thing? That for me is a really great rule of thumb. If there has been a change, sit down and talk about it. Also, when you're thinking about budgets, there is one free thing that somebody can use. It's called Every Dollar app. And up there, you can do the paid version, which connects to your bank account. But if you don't have that, you literally just create a monthly budget and you can put how much your significant other may be contributing. Every time you go out, you can subtract it from that. So like finding different tools as well that both of you all are comfortable with. So when you come to the table with the conversation, I'm coming to the table with numbers. For women, we're more emotional. For men, they need numbers. So if we're coming with numbers, then they can see why we're suggesting that change. And it doesn't just come from, oh, well, today I was thinking about you and I thought that you should be paying more about it. No, let me show you the numbers to show you why we're making this change. But change is when the conversation should happen.
Yeah, and they say that marriage is a business deal, but I would even say moving in together is a business deal. Like you are stepping into a partnership with someone where your finances do have to be a lot more transparent, and it is not a totally comfortable conversation to have. I mean, I have a whiteboard in my room where I have quarterly financial goals and I'm shading it in as I make money. So anytime my boyfriend walks into my room, like, he sees it. He knows exactly what I make. And I was like, it's not something I'm hiding, but it was like knowing his finances and just having those conversations is something that I was like, it's not that important to me yet. I know it's something that will need to be more important down the line, like spending habits and how much he brings in and any bonuses that come in, because he knows pretty much what I'm doing. Like my spending habits, I spend on necessities and every now and then it'll be a little extra something. But for the most part, I'm very responsible, and he fluctuates with responsibility and he's admitted that and he wants to dial it back in. But he also has the luxury, he has a little bit more money to play around with to have higher spending habits or bigger spending habits. But it is important to know who is in charge of what and how much they are in charge of, and then kind of releasing what else they have, like their own money. Because providing you're not married yet. I think once you're married, that becomes an even bigger conversation of what's mine is yours, and however your marriage wants to dive into that. But just for a moving in together perspective, it is a topic of conversation that needs to be had. You need to know who is contributing what and if it's okay with both of you. And then I love your contribution of checking in anytime a change is being made.
Yeah, and it's so important because, relationships in general, let's not even talk marriage. Let's just say we're talking to that 20-something-year-old couple that are trying to figure out what's next. Unexpressed expectations is what kills a relationship. when I have these expectations in my head. So let's just say you have one person that makes significantly more than the other. You need to express if you think that because they make significantly more, they should be helping you. Like that is a very serious conversation. Hey, I'm coming in with this debt. I'm doing the best that I can, because everybody's situation is different. Like I said, with me and my fiance, we are now more on a playing field. But when we first met each other, I had a career for over a decade. He was a veteran from the military, so he's basically starting all over. So I didn't have an expectation where you better come in and we have to meet, we have to match. You pay for every meal that we go out to, you pay for all the bills that come. That was never my expectation. And then as well, we're blending family. So I'm in my 30s. I'm not in my 20s. So I've kind of already lived the 20 something life of trying to build. So I'm coming in with children. He's coming in with children. I'm coming in having to sell my house and different things. I could not come in expecting him off the jump to act like my husband, even though I know that's who he is. So that expectation, we have to be mindful of that. And we need to know, is that coming from things that we learned growing up, or is this truly my true value? For some of us, for women, we're told he's supposed to take care of everything, depending on what household you come from. But I had to navigate and say, that's not how it looks. I want for both of us to have stability. I want for both of us to be able to go and get our needs and our wants and things like that. So that's where that conversation comes in at. So you have to express those expectations, so then y'all can come together and create a shared expectation of the relationship so they can hold it together as glue. So that's also important too. Express your expectation. If you're coming in and your non-negotiable is we don't do 50-50, we do 100 and I do 0, it's okay, queen. Tell him that. If you're coming in as the male and you're like, hey, I need 50-50, I'm now, especially if you're in your 20s, I'm building. I haven't made it to my career yet. So I might still be working a part-time job. So this is what I can contribute. Can you contribute with me to make this work? You have to express those things before you even talk about moving in, or it will crash, because one person's going to feel like I'm pulling weight that you're not pulling. So that unexpressed expectation is also important for people to discuss as well as they're making this decision.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of conversations to have before making this decision. So like we've covered finances. What is something else? Like what are some problems or commonalities, not even necessarily problems, but commonalities that couples might overlook when it comes to making this decision? So trying to think of topics like how they handle arguments, or what happens if someone's sick, or like, are you expected to spend all your time together, like intentional date nights? Like what are some other things, maybe outside of finances, that it's important for couples to establish and communicate with one another to set those expectations up front and be on the same page prior to this next step?
All of that you just said. But the things that come to mind starting out is you need to know what your love language is. So starting out there, hands down, is going to be very important. If you don't know what your love language is, you can Google love language quiz and take that love language quiz. For me, all of them are my love language because I'm coming from a background of trauma. So there's a lot of stuff that I did not get that I desire from my significant other. So what me and my fiance did was we took the quiz, and then we have a shared form where we broke down, if you were to show me that you love me, what would that look like utilizing any of these? Because both you and I have different major love languages. But if you learn how to love me your way, but in a way that I can actually recognize it, then that makes it a little bit better. So we really started with that. What is your love languages and how can I show it? What does it look like for you? Because it might not look the same as an example that's online. Your love language may look different. So yeah, you like gift giving or gift receiving. What does that look like? Okay, well, for me, it's not going to buy me a Prada bag. I don't want you spending $200+ on me. For me, it looked like going to get me a card and some Reese cups. That's a total of $5. That makes me happy. Like, having that conversation of what is my love language, because a lot of the times you can be showing up and showing your significant other, I love you, but because it's not in their language, they feel like that you don't love them. The analogy I love to give is if my main language is English and you're coming in and speaking Spanish and I don't know no lick of Spanish, you're telling me you love me, but I don't hear a lick of what you're saying. That's really going to be important. A second piece of this that you said is the intentionality. Like, what does dating look like? Once we move in, and this is something that my fiance and I experienced that we didn't really realize, which I'm glad I'm able to share it here, is you go from the excitement of I get to see you when I schedule you in to I'm seeing you every single day. Whether I'm sharing a room or not, I get to see you every day. We get to eat together. Anytime I go outside, I'm considering you. You want to go with me? There is not a lot of just me time. So then what happens is you move in with that person and then now they're taking time to themselves and you're like, well, what about me? What happened? What happened to me? You have to begin to set those intentions. So there is a rule I like to encourage people to start living by. It's called the 2 by 2 by 2 rule. Every 2 weeks, we at least should have one date night. At least one date night. No matter how busy we are, by the time the end of that 2 weeks come, if I haven't spent date night with you, and that means uninterrupted time, just me and you, nobody else, we need to go ahead and put that on the calendar. Every 2 months, there's like a weekend where it's just me and you, whether it's a weekend getaway or a weekend we stay on home vacation, but that whole entire weekend is uninterrupted me and you. And then every 2 years is a vacation of some sort from about 5 to 7 days. If you follow that, no matter how busy life gets, I will never not have time for my person. I will never not have time for you because it's intentional. Another conversation to have is sex. We live in a society where people don't want to talk sex, but everything's sexualized, right? And then you bring into religion as well. You need to understand, where does your religion play in your decision making? Because if, let's say, I say that sex before marriage is a no-go for me, I need to have that conversation, because now we're going from I have my own space and you get to go home and I get to, kumbaya, get myself together, to no, you're in this space. Do I see you naked? Do you need to be clothed? What are the rules and boundaries that we're going to establish? Are we deciding that that's our lifestyle or not? And it goes back to convictions. If I go to bed with peace, that helps me make my decision. And then, of course, just how involved family is. Are you an introvert, extrovert? There are some times where when I'm dating, I don't know if my person likes to go out and know people. For me and my fiance, we're both extroverts. We both know so many people that we had to establish, hey, if we're out and about and we're at a space where there's a bunch of people that we know, it's okay to go say, hey, but I'm out with you. We need to come back. We're not going to be leaving for 15, 20 minutes. Like, those are the different conversations that need to be had. And then there's another level. For some people who are 20 something, you have children. You have to decide what role you want that person to play in your child's life. Do they even know your children? Are they involved in that? If you move in, are they moving in where it's children involved? If so, what is your expectation? Do they help with drop off, pickup, homework? Or do they have the excuse of they're not my kids, so I can go chill and do whatever I want to do? Those are the most important conversations we need to have, but we don't have until a problem arises. Then we want to have a conversation.
Yeah, I like the 2-2-2 rule. I've heard that before. But I think it comes more to that of intentionality is important, date nights are important, but breaking it down, taking a step back, you are now seeing each other in every light possible. And it's not going to be the most attractive lights all the time. So how do you deal with that, with like the unpleasant side of a partner that you're starting to see that they're in their natural habitat? And even if you're spending all this time together before you're living together, there's still some level of care that they're putting into their appearance, their behavior, their mannerisms, what they're doing. But when there is none of that separation anymore, you're seeing all sides, and it's not always pleasant. So I want to hear your thoughts on that.
So you need to know what your non-negotiables are. So, for example, if one thing they love to talk about, if your pet peeve is your man leaving the toilet up, but he always leaves the toilet up, the question you got to ask yourself is, I'm really going to get upset or angry at this person, or am I going to extend grace? right? There's certain things that I may not like that I'm going to extend grace because I'm reminded of all the other things that they do for me that makes me happy. So it's really picking your fight. Like picking what is really going to compromise this relationship. That is one thing I always tell people. Yes, it is great to communicate, but ask yourself, is this worth even communicating? If it is a pet peeve of yours, then you share that in a conversation. But if you learn that this is just their habit, you got to realize sometimes a lot of us are still learning. You know, we all don't have the same upbringing. So the way that your mom taught you how to clean the bathroom is not the same way that your significant other mom taught them how to clean the bathroom, or finances, or religious rituals and stuff like that. Your upbringing is different. So in a relationship, it's sometimes in the beginning taking time to observe who they really are. And if everything's a red flag for you, you don't need to be in a relationship. I tell people that all the time. If the way they brush their teeth, the way that they chew, the way that they dress, if everything's just irritating to you already, please don't take that step, because it's not going to get any better because you're spending more time with them, because now they get to be vulnerable. You get to see them without their makeup. You get to see them when their bald head actually got hair on it and it's a cul-de-sac. Like you get to see all those things. So the reality of it is learning what is worth fighting about. 2, share your life story depending on the why you moved in. Let me give that caveat. If you're just moved in for convenience and y'all still kind of learning each other, then it might not be worth you sharing your whole entire life story. But if you're moving in because it's the next step, you got a ring on your finger, you got a date booked, you need to tell that person who they're marrying, who are they in a relationship with, because there's certain things that you may penalize them for that is not even them, but something that you experience. So I know for me, I tell my fiance, hey, this was a trigger for me. Can you give me a moment? It don't have nothing to do with you, but let me take a moment real quick and process. And then when I'm done processing, now I can tell you, well, this is why I responded X, Y, and Z way. Now he's like, okay, well, I won't do that again. I get it. I didn't mean to do that. So it's also knowing, what are we even in this relationship for? Or why are we moving in for? Because if it is for next steps, serious conversations need to happen, so then that person know why you respond the way that you do. If it's just convenience, you might not have that conversation up up front, but you also need to let them know, what's your pet peeves? What is, again, go back to my expectations. Do I expect us to share the cleaning, or do I have roles in my head where the woman cooks, clean, and do everything else? I need to start sharing that information, because that's also important when you're moving in with each other, so then you know how to navigate and you won't have so many conflicts.
Yeah, I mean, it all really comes down to communication. That's like, is it time to move in together? You need to communicate on a lot of different levels. I want to shift into a trend that has been popping up more and more recently, and that is couples who move in together, but they have separate bedrooms and separate bathrooms. So they're roommates, but they're a couple that lives together. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's positive, actually. Again, and it goes back to your value system. If your value system says, hey, I know that I'm supposed to have my own space until I actually say I do, but Bills is saying I need a partner, then you may do the roommate piece where, yes, we're helping each other financially, but we still have our own space, right? But you also, again, goes back to communicating expectations. I may have my own room, but do I expect you to come and sleep over with me X, Y, and Z amount of times? Is this you get to come and go as you please, or are we checking in like we're really in a relationship where when you do something, you check in with me, I check in with you? It goes back down to you discussing what you want that foundation to be. I do believe that it's a positive thing, especially if there's some decisions that you believe should be held until you're married. Then it decreases some of the things that may get you to make a decision that will make you feel bad, right? So now I have my separate space. I have my separate bathroom. We still can move just like we did before. We schedule time to spend time together. So it goes back down, like you said, that communication. What do we want this to look like? Are we just going to be roommates where we're just paying bills and we have our separate lifestyle? Or are we paying bills, having our own rooms just so that we can have our own space, but we're still moving as if we're moving together as a unit? That's a decision that couple has to make together.
Yeah, my best friend and I have, we talked about this pretty recently actually, where we were like, ideally, we would want like a 3 bedroom house with our boyfriends. And it would be, we have our bedroom, and then we each of us have our own spaces. So like he is his man cave, I like my girly space, and like that's my,
Uh-huh.
not even necessarily an office, but just a place that is mine. Whereas like I have a place to kind of like go back to hide in if I just need to collect myself or be with my own thoughts or live my life independently for a little bit, just how important it is. I mean, my boyfriend and I have, we've talked about like no matter what, we would never have a 1 bedroom apartment. Like it would automatically be a 2 bedroom. And I go in with that mentality of like, yeah, he works from home, so providing I'm moving in with him, like he would have that second bedroom as his office, and I'd
Right.
be fine just on the couch. But ideally, it would be 3 bedrooms. We each have our own rooms that we can go to, but come together at the end of the day. But that's our relationship. I think if you're with someone who is on an opposite schedule as you, if you're a night shift nurse or you have a third shift, or I mean, I sometimes wake up. I have to wake up at 4:50 twice a week for personal training clients, and just knowing that if sleep is a big factor for you, like sleep is a really big factor for me, and if you're on different schedules, sometimes it is more beneficial to sleep apart. And it doesn't mean that you guys don't love each other. It doesn't mean that you're going to break up. It doesn't mean it's your relationship isn't working. It's finding the solution that's going to work for you. And if you really want to move in together, but you know that you have either different schedules, maybe it's the other person snores a lot and you just can't sleep next to them, but you still love them and you love every part of them and you want them in your life. It makes sense to sleep separately,
Yeah.
to have those separate spaces. I know for older generations looking down, they're just like, that's weird. Like, why are you doing that? You should share a room. You should be together. That's why you're together. So it's just interesting. It's interesting to see the shift happen.
Yeah. And it's weird because there's a lot of stuff that the older generation didn't really share, where, it might have looked like they slept together every night, but sometimes they didn't. I know my children's father, his nana and grandpa, nana still sleeps on the couch and grandpa had a room in the back. When the first time I heard that, I was like, that is so strange and weird, because I can never see myself not, sleeping next to my significant other. But that goes back down to do what works for you. For some people, having separate spaces wouldn't work for them. For other people, having a space together wouldn't work. But you just have to do what works best for you and not look for the validation from what the world says. We have so many relationship podcasts and all of that. I am not here as a relationship expert to tell you have to do it this way. I am literally just here to say, have that conversation with your person so y'all can determine what your relationship looks like and what's going to work best for both of you, because it's the sustainability is going to be based off of the work that y'all two put in. Nobody else. It's going to be what decisions that you guys make together and separately. So those things are very important.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you want to seek external, maybe support, validation, or answers, it comes back to you. You're not going to get the answers from someone else or someone else's relationship or what someone's doing or not doing. I think another pitfall that I see a lot happen is taking a next step in a relationship to try to save the relationship, of like, oh no, it'll be better when we move in together. Oh no, it'll get better once we're engaged. It'll get better once we're married. It'll get better once we have kids. And it's like you constantly hold on to that next milestone moment to improve the relationship that you're experiencing right now. And that's just not how that works. So I want you to speak on that. Like, have you seen that with couples within your clients, and how do you help them stay focused on the now and potentially leave the relationship they're in because it's not going to get better when XYZ happens?
Yeah, so I'm definitely a realist. I'm really big on, again, if you have more questions than answers, then there might be a resolution to just go ahead and go your separate ways. I never tell a person to stay or not to stay, right? It all goes down to, when I go to bed at night, am I tossing and turning or am I at peace? What does that even look like? So if you are already having problems and challenges, there is no amount of a ring, saying I do, or children that's going to make the situation better. It's actually going to cause another rip in the situation. And if it's already not strong enough, it's going to fall apart. right? So because of that, then the question is, in the now, are you willing to repair the rips that is already there? So that, and it's going to be a religious reference, so that you can have a new wineskin to hold what's new. You can't have an old wineskin, meaning I can't have this broken relationship and then add an engagement to it and think that it's going to hold up. I can't add a marriage to it and think it's going to hold up. I can't add children to it or more finances or a better career or all these other things and think it's going to hold up if what I have is already broken and ripped.
I think it's easier said than done, like most things in life, because I know I've talked about this with different girlfriends of different friends of ours relationships, and outside looking in, we see this is a weak relationship, like this is not strong, but the person in that relationship doesn't think that. So is there any markers? Is there, other than just am I constantly asking questions, just how can someone objectively look at their relationship and answer for themselves, is this strong? Will this repair itself long term, or is it time to let this person go?
So when something becomes from a decision to a consistent pattern. So what do I mean by that? You guys are fresh, new. You didn't know that it was something that your significant other did not like. So for example, let's just say y'all work during the week. Y'all both get up very early, but you didn't know that on Saturdays they like to sleep in. But on Saturdays, you go your regular routine. First time you're with that person, alarm goes off, they get up and they fuss you out. And you're like, hold up, wait a minute, what happened? Okay, y'all have a conversation. They let you know, hey, this is my time where I normally sleep in. So on Saturdays, I really just want to sleep in. So now you have to decide whether or not getting up regular time is still important to you, or do I set my alarm a little bit later and we create a resolution? Like, hey, well, instead of at 5 o'clock, I'm going to get up at 9. Is that enough time? Is this alarm going to wake you up? Whatever. You already had the conversation. You do the solution. The solution was, my alarm's going to be set at 9 o'clock. Next week 9 o'clock comes, same thing. You get fussed out. Now we have a pattern because we've already talked about what decision was going to help both of us reach a balance. Waking up consistently on a schedule is really important to me, because if I change my schedule, then I'm going to have a hard time getting up the time that I need to get up at 5 o'clock. So I have to keep my consistent schedule. But I compromised. I said I'll do it at 9 so it won't wake you up. But you woke up and you still fussed at me. Now this is a pattern. So every week we keep going to a resolution. He said, you know what? Yeah, we did. We made a compromise. But you fuss at me every time. Then that's when I need to start asking myself, does this person really love me? Because the compromise we created, they're not even adhering to that. I know that's a very simple example, but that can be in any piece. That can be in who cooks, who cleans, who pay the bills. Again, if you bring children in, am I supposed to be active with them, or can I still live my life as if I don't have children? But if that person consistently do things that make you cry, that consistently do things that make you question your value, your worth, that makes you question how knowledgeable you are, how valuable you are. And I know we want to get away from questions, but genuinely, if that person does not make you feel good majority of the time, then you might ask yourself, is this a solid foundation? Because if I'm being broken down more than built up, then what am I really here for? Why am I settling here? There's a question I love to ask people or say, if you love yourself 75%, but somebody comes in and loves you 76% in the areas you don't love yourself, you're going to be willing to actually submit to them because it feels like 100% type of love. But if I love myself 100%, I know my value, I know my worth, I know how I should be talked to, I know how I should be treated. I treat that person the way that I want to be treated. And I find myself constantly begging for your time. I find myself constantly, not want to be around you because when I'm around you, you're fussing, you're fighting, or I feel like you're ignoring me. If I have these feelings and I've already addressed it via communication and nothing has changed, The first time you get a conversation, the second time you get a conversation, but then I also tell you how important that is to me, which goes back to non-negotiables. That third time, I'm going to ask myself, if I was to say I do to this person today, would I actually be happy if they don't change? If there is a change that needs to happen, doing all the other steps is not going to help it at all.
Yeah, I've heard the last one a lot of, if the person you're with doesn't change a single thing about them from this point on, would you still love them? Like, would you still want to be with them? And I know a lot of people in relationships that's not the case, but it's hard as a friend to say like, hey, you should not be with this person anymore, because you don't see all sides of that relationship. I think it's from speaking from like outsider looking in, is like you hear the venting from your friends, and it's hard. And I did this to my friends with my ex, and I would vent to them. I'd say like all the things he did wrong, and I wouldn't really talk about the things he was doing well. Whereas the shift is, honestly, there's not really a ton that my boyfriend does wrong. So like I can't think of anything. So there is that part, which I think is like a really healthy distinguishing factor of, yeah, I would turn to my friends and be like, oh, ex-boyfriend, blah, 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 not painting him in a positive light. And that does not happen now. That's what you want in your relationship. Like, yes, there's going to be some issues that come up or maybe some arguments that happen. But if you're constantly turning to your friends and saying like, oh, they're in the doghouse this week, or like we had another fight, or like this happened again, and you're not able to come back to one another before you're turning to your friends for the emotional support, something's up, and you probably should not be thinking about moving in together. You should be thinking about breaking up.
Yeah. Or not being afraid to go to counseling. You know, we all come with baggage, and sometimes you need a person to help you navigate the baggage. So if you do find your person and you realize like, I can't see myself without this person, but we keep having, issues, it is okay to seek out therapy, and the one thing about a good therapist, they're not going to promise you a certain outcome. The only thing they're going to do is take you through activities so that y'all two can kind of take down the blinders and see who each other really is. I know for me with my clients, I take them through an 8-week coaching program before we even get to the therapeutic things, where I am going to work with them as a couple, but we're talking about who they are as individuals. Like, who do you really bring to the table? Because after years of being together, especially if you live together, now you're in mesh. My values now are becoming your values. We're just all of this. Everything's happy. Okay, great. But there is a part of me that I might be missing. So I like to bring them back to who they originally were together. And then now we create something new that looks like a couple in a unit. So where nobody becomes more important, but each person's voice, each person's values become super duper important. And that is important. So if someone does get to it where you're like, we keep having issues, instead of running to your friend, because here's the thing I've learned. If you constantly run to family and friends about the issues, they're not going to like your person. I don't care how much sweetness they got. You don't always have problems, but every time you ring their phone as a problem, they're not going to trust that person. So even if you do keep going the route of getting engaged, getting married, having children, in the back of their head, they're waiting for the other shoe to fall, and you're wondering why you keep facing issues, and it's because everybody else on the outside only know the bad stuff. So sometimes reaching out to a professional first to help you navigate spaces, get you strong. When you have a strong relationship and those conflicts happen, you don't even think about calling your friend. You now think about, all right, babe, we just talked about it. That was really hard. I may have shed a tear, but let me kiss you. Good night. I love you. See you tomorrow. That's when you know your relationship is healthy, compared to we keep having the same issues. Now I haven't talked to you all week. We pass each other every time we see each other in the hallway. Those are the things that's like, okay, what are we really doing here?
Yeah, I agree. And this episode is to highlight, like, is it time to move in together? And then really to help you not end up in a breakup, even though like that might happen. We can't prevent that, obviously, but it's more of like, don't put all your eggs into this basket. Don't jump right on in without having these important conversations and these check-ins with yourself and with your partner prior as well as throughout. That being said, there is a known statistic that your rate of divorce, your chance of divorce increases when couples move in together prior to marriage. And I think it has to do with People set expectations of this is when we're boyfriend and girlfriend, and then that'll change for maybe like household chores or just how they show up in a relationship. It changes once marriage happens, and that's where this rift happens, this divide. Outside of what we've already discussed, what is some advice you can give to couples listening to decrease those chances of divorce from happening?
So one of the biggest thing is premarital counseling, and it doesn't have to be done with religious people, unless that is what your faith is. But finding you a relationship coach, finding you a person who does premarital counseling, so that you can build a solid foundation. A marriage is not going to fall apart if the foundation is solid. It falls apart when the foundation is already on sand and we already have issues and we're thinking, well, if I do the next thing, which we just talked about, then it's going to get better. That doesn't get better. So bringing experts in to truly ask you the questions that are the hard questions, because sometimes we don't know what we should know. If you've never been married before, and some people get married in their 20s, early 30s, you don't really know what to ask. You're kind of like, I just really love this person. I know they're my person. But if you have somebody on the outside guiding you through the right topics to discuss, then that's helpful. So topics like family, sex, finances, is it blended families, careers, what does intentionality look like? So bringing an expert in to help guide that conversation. Secondly, we've already kind of talked about, but having the conversation about what is my expectation of this marriage. What exactly is marriage to me? For some people, marriage is strictly just a business contract. It don't have nothing to do with love and feelings of butterflies. It literally has all to do with, look, me and you work well financially. We're going to make this thing happen. For other people, it's just strictly about love. So then what happens is they don't have a solid foundation on the other things that makes it, make it work. So having that conversation of what is your expectation? What is marriage? And keep people out of your journey. I can speak for me personally. I am 100% Christian. I love my faith. I love my church. I love my people. However, I recently went through a divorce, and I just told you I'm about to get married again. The questions that everybody asked me was, well, how long? Why are you doing it now? The ink haven't even dried yet. And I was like, but y'all don't know what my creator told me, that this is my person and this is who I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. If I listened to the naysayers, I would not be marrying probably the best man I've ever met in my life. So I share that to say, be okay with your own journey. People are going to judge you whether you do it their way or not their way. So you have to decide, again, conviction. You got to decide what feels good to you. No matter what your religious preferences, I always tell people, do what makes you the best version of yourself, and nobody else is getting hurt by your decision. If you're doing that, go and be great. Go live with your person. Have 2 separate rooms, have 1 room. Whatever it is that you decide to do, but that is super important. Take charge and be bold with your own journey, because your journey is not going to look like your parents and grandparents. Our society is completely different than when our parents was raising us. So some of the things that, like, for example, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. I can't do that even if I wanted to, So it's embracing your own journey. And I believe that is what's going to decrease divorce. When we stop trying to check other people's boxes, we'll have happier marriages and people will last a lifetime. And then lastly, this is going to sound very crazy. If you know that you are going to cheat and you are unfaithful, let me be real with you. Have the conversation with your spouse so that they can decide whether or not this is the relationship they want to be in, because that's another piece that breaks people. We have a lot of options out here. It's easier access than it was back in the day. Back in the day, I'll pass you my number. I had to call you on a phone. We had to set a schedule. Now I can just slide in your inbox. I can just, we can have whatever conversations. Know if you are ready and what type of relationship you want. I believe in monogamy, but there are some people that believe in polygamy. Y'all have to have the conversation of what your relationship looks like. That's another reason why divorces is spelling as well, because we got so many options. Know if you only want one option and make that person your option, and we'll have some better numbers in the future.
Yeah, and define what cheating means for each of you, because you guys could have different definitions, and then if it doesn't align or they don't know what your definition is and they go and do something that for you counts as cheating, like there's no way to know. So you do need to define what that means for you guys. And I like that you emphasize focusing on your own journey, because I know people that have moved in together after 3 months of knowing one another. I know people who have moved in after 3 years of knowing one another. And it's really where you and your partner are at in your life, in just timeline, in next step, in the future you're painting together, like all of that, it comes down to you and your relationship. We're going to just keep repeating that for you guys, because it is so important to have conversations around expectations, around relationships, around who you are, your values. Like, have conversations with yourself, have conversations with your partner. The more you talk, the less there is a chance of error, because it is so clearly out in the open and you guys both understand one another.
Yeah.
But amazing. Thank you so much, Mylira, for coming on How to 20-something. If people want to get in touch with you or work with you or ask you questions about their relationships, where can they find you?
So you can find me at Mylira Green on Facebook. That is like my main platform. I'm building a virtual community where nobody feels like they're alone. So you can go and follow that page. I ask daily questions. I do lives as well. There are times where I say, hey, if you need a question, you can inbox me. It does not go to an admin or a bot. It goes directly to me. So feel free. And then my website is www.myliratransforms.com. It allows for you to contact me there as well via email. And I love to give my phone number, and people think I'm crazy, but genuinely, when I die, I want suicide to die with me. And the only way I can do that is to make sure nobody feels alone. So that number is 757-609-0694. You can text it, you can call it. But I want to make sure that people know that forever is still a goal. We just need support to know that we can actually reach it.
I love that. That's so sweet. You guys listening already know her information will be in the show notes for you guys to access right away. Otherwise, this does conclude another episode of How to 20-something. If you liked what you heard, if you learned something new, if you or someone you know is about to move in with their partner, then please share this episode, post on social media, or send it directly to someone you know. Just do something to help me reach all of the 20-somethings in this world. And as always, I can't wait to be in your headphones again next week with another brand new episode.